What's up everyone, this is Dr. Kazi back with another video on pelvic anatomy. In this video, we are going to learn about what is pelvic outlet. In the previous video, we have already learned about the difference between the false pelvis and the true pelvis. Before discussing pelvic outlet, let us revise what we already know about the hip bone or the os coccyx. Have a look. This bone, the os coccyx or the hip bone, is formed by the combination of three bones: ilium, ischium, yes, and the pubis. You already know that. Now, some of the bony features of this hip bone is really important. For example, the ischial spine, which is the spine of the ischium bone, will divide this whole hip bone into two types of notches: the greater sciatic notch and the lesser sciatic notch. Now, some of the other important bony features of the pelvis are the ischial tuberosity and the ischiopubic rami. Now, ischial tuberosity is the origin site of the hamstring muscles. It is the part of the pelvic bone where you sit on. The ischiopubic rami, as the name suggests, rami is a plural. It means two ramus will combine with each other to form one rami. So the ischial rami plus the pubic rami will form the ischiopubic rami. Now these two rami will form an arc-like structure which is known as the pubic arch, and it is on the anterior side. Now let us compare this diagram with this cylindrical structure in order to understand about the pelvic inlet, pelvic cavity, and the pelvic outlet. Now we know that in both sexes, in males as well as in females, we have the pelvic inlet, pelvic outlet, and the pelvic cavity. Consider this red dotted line, which is the boundary of the pelvic inlet, which is also known as the pelvic brim. This pelvic inlet will lead into a cavity which is known as the pelvic cavity, and pelvic cavity will end at the pelvic outlet. So this red dotted line is the pelvic inlet, this whole cavity is the pelvic cavity, and this pelvic cavity will end somewhere right here, which is known as the pelvic outlet. Now let us understand about the pelvic outlet more clearly by looking at the boundaries of the pelvic outlet. So anteriorly, if we look at this diagram, we see that we have the ischiopubic rami and the symphysis pubis. Laterally, if we look at this diagram, we have the ischial tuberosity on the lateral side. On the back side, we have this coccyx bone, which I have shown with the red color. Now, let us turn this whole pelvic cavity like this and see from the bottom what are the boundaries. So consider this diagram. Anteriorly, it is very visible. We have the symphysis pubis, and on this both side we have the ischiopubic rami. Laterally, we have the ischial tuberosity. Here we have the ischial tuberosity laterally on both sides. Now, the laterally, we also have a type of a ligament which is known as the sacrotuberous ligament, and posteriorly we have the coccyx bone. Now let us see how these ligaments are arranged: the sacrotuberous ligament and the sacrospinous ligament. Consider this diagram. We have two types of notches: the greater sciatic notch and the lesser sciatic notch. Now these two notches will be converted into the foramen, which is known as the greater sciatic foramen and the lesser sciatic foramen. Let us see how the foramen are formed. Consider this diagram. The sacrum bone will be connected with this spine, which is known as the ischial spine, by a type of a ligament which is known as the sacrospinous ligament. Okay, because it is connecting the sacrum bone with this spine, which is known as the ischial spine. So sacrospinous ligament will form greater sciatic foramen. Now, below the lesser sciatic foramen, we have lesser sciatic foramen, which is converted by a ligament, sacrotuberous ligament, because it is connecting the sacrum bone with this tuberosity, which is known as the ischial tuberosity. So the sacrotuberous ligament is forming the lesser sciatic foramen. Thank you so much for watching. In the next video, we are going to learn about the difference between the male pelvis and the female pelvis. Stay tuned. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.